In this video, we're going to talk about what's new in Fusion 360 for their September 22 release, specifically for forms and mesh bodies. Hey everyone, this is Matt with Learn Everything About Design, and in this video, we're going to talk about the release that just happened today in Fusion 360, and specifically focus on some of the things that we cover on this channel quite a bit, which are forms and mesh bodies. Now, the recent release of Fusion 360, if you don't know, it has been anticipated for a while. They did fix a handful of things, and really the functionality that was added, at least in respect to mesh and T-splines or forms, is really not all that much. So I want to just quickly talk about what that means, see if it actually is an improvement for us and what we need to do with those tools. So on the design side, there are claimed improvements on the speed in which you can open assemblies, which you can analyze joint performance. And the big one for me that I saw was zooming in and out of these 3D scanned mesh files. This is something obviously we do when we're designing components with forms relative to a mesh body. So I want to take a look at that. The other thing that I want to note is there are 3 or 4 updates to T-splines. Now, this is the forms functionality. The first one is that a remove T-points option is added to the Make Uniform tool. Now, you could remove or change those T-points to star points. It's a little bit misleading because you're not actually removing them. But you could do that automatically by using the repair bodies. But now they've added this to the Make Uniform tool. So we're going to take a look at that and see what that means. There also is some changes to the way that these surface and solid bodies from T-splines gets converted. Now, that's a little bit trickier because it is very much geometry based, but in the past, sometimes you would get these long, stringy surfaces or solid faces. And really, that's not what you want when you're converting a design. So I'll have to play around with that a bit more on different designs and see how that changes. And lastly, there was a change to being able to open some of these T-spline files. If you don't know, T-splines was a technology that was acquired by Autodesk many years ago. It used to be a third-party add-in for things like Fusion, Inventor, Rhino, and so on. And it's incorporated into Inventor and into Fusion 360. There are still other software packages that allow you to export those subdivided files, such as Alias, and bring that in as a T-spline file. And of course, we've talked about Blender converting quad meshes and bringing those into Fusion T-splines. So again, that's a new addition there or a change, but not something that we really talk about on this channel. So now I want to just quickly go over each of these things, specifically the T-splines, T-point removal, and whether or not that's a good thing for us. And then I want to take a look at a mesh body. So first, this is the MR2 fender flare. I have the version we did in the videos, and then this is the sort of the speed through version I did. I want to talk about that change to utilities and Make Uniform. Now, the Make Uniform tool, and again, we're going to be prompted to upgrade a T-spline body on all of your designs because there is new functionality. It's just how it goes with these designs. But with this T-spline functionality, when we use Make Uniform, it's taking our smooth body and it's trying to relax some of those areas where the edges are close together, and we might have additional tension in those areas. And what it does is it takes the smooth display and it makes it a little bit closer to our underlying box display. Now, I'm going to hit cancel on this just so we can take a quick look. When we take a look at the smooth display, you can see that these edges are relatively far apart. When we go into our box display, you can see they're closer together. Now, they're closer together because we're driving that edge. We want a crease in this design. It's not a hard crease, but we want that edge that we have in the design. When we use things like Make Uniform, what's going to happen is we're going to get this to relax a little bit. Now, they added this remove T-points option in Make Uniform, and I'm not entirely sure that this is a good thing. And the reason for that is because most designs will have multiple T-points. Now, this design specifically only has one, and that was an intentional T-point because I wanted to help control the edge of this flare, but I also wanted to have this crease that sort of went away from that flare in the back. Now, the reason I don't necessarily think that this is a good thing is because it's all or nothing. If you have multiple T-points in a design, you are removing them all or you are leaving them all in the design. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So I'm going to use Control and 4 to hide my edges. And I want to note that we've got this flat fender lip, and then we've got this crease that sort of comes off, but it's almost fading away into it. And when we say okay, and we take a look at this, what ends up happening is that T point gets converted to a star point. And that star point actually does change the way in which that geometry ends. And what that means is that we can't really tell that until we convert it, until we go through the process. And the reason that I don't necessarily think that this is a good thing is because that functionality was already there in repair body. If we use repair body, we have a T point here. We can click and turn it into a star point or turn it back into a T point. Now, I think that this is a better option because we can see the change in the design on the screen without having to go through the process of converting it. So when it's a T point, you can see that this crease sort of disappears before it gets to this lip. When we convert it to a star point, it fades this edge away. So it's tight up here, it's tight down here, and it sort of disappears here. Now, and if the design happened to have multiple T points on it, so for example, the fender that we did in the video series, if I go to repair body and I take a look at these, again, we have to convert it. It's just part of the process when we have new functionality. This design has two T points. It's got one where this crease ends at this edge. Now, this is actually a creased edge in this design. It doesn't have a smooth transition, but we also have the same thing underneath. Now, if we click on each of these, it is going to have an effect on the overall design. That may be okay, that may not be okay. But if we're using the utilities make uniform, it is all or nothing with those T points. We're going to have to convert both of them. Now, it's not exactly a one-to-one thing. It's not identical using repair body and make uniform. And the reason for that is because make uniform also relaxes the form a little bit. Remember, it's taking out some of that tension. So you don't actually get the exact same result through both tools. You'll have to play around with it and decide whether or not it works for you. The reason that, again, that I don't like it is because it's all or nothing with the T points. You can't keep all the T points. I'm sorry, you can keep all the T points, but you can't keep some of the T points. Now that we've taken a look at what that is and what it does, let's talk about the mesh update. Now, I have a mesh file open here that is over 10 million facets, 10 million faces. Now, this is a pretty heavy mesh file to be working with inside of Fusion 360. Now, I have not really noticed any performance difference with something like this. I zoom in, I zoom out, and it still sort of jumps around and is a bit buggy. I think that there is going to be a limit to the mesh resolution or the number of mesh elements where we're really going to see a performance gain. I don't have some supercomputer here with a high-end graphics card. I really have what I would consider a bare bones CAD workstation with a relatively low-end CAD graphics card, simply because I don't feel that you need it when working with Fusion 360. It doesn't really take a lot of the multi-core, multi-threading processes. It doesn't really rely heavily on a high-end graphics card. And obviously, if you're using Inventor or SolidWorks, or if you're doing a lot in things like Blender, that's a different story. But in Fusion 360, I really don't think that there's a big need for the high-end hardware. So I don't have it on the system that I make these videos with. So with that said, again, there is a slight performance difference, but it's not mind-boggling. So if you're struggling bringing car models or fender models into Fusion 360, I don't think this is going to make a drastic difference for you. I would like to hear in the comments if you do see a performance jump from yesterday to today, if you are now able to work with these mesh files a little bit easier. For me, with these large mesh files, I haven't seen a drastic difference to where I would have even noticed if I hadn't have read it on the blog. That's not to say that there aren't performance gains in other areas, especially when dealing with large assemblies or solving joints. But on the mesh side of things, I haven't seen a big difference. I imagine that if you're dealing with a mesh that has 10,000 or fewer facets, you'll probably see a performance jump. Once you get up into the hundreds of thousands or even millions of facets, I think it's all bets are off just because Fusion is not really intended to work with mesh files like that. So there are a whole host of other updates in Fusion 360. I honestly don't really think that many of them are going to be worth covering, at least for what we cover on this channel. But if you see something that you're interested in, please let me know. And if you have any questions on this, let me know. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.